So today I've got an old buddy here, Matt Hullander. It's been a long time. I think it's to catch up. This is a good venue to do it, and I'm excited. You've got something in front of you. What have you got there?
Yeah, I wrote this book last year, and I signed this one for you. So
Buddy,
there you go, buddy.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks
Yeah,
for coming
my pleasure.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, glad to be a guest.
To come full circle, I think you've come full circle and starting on your second lap. Tremendous experiences, a lot of it outlined in the book. But for me and my experience with Matt Hullander, it starts at Hullco. And I've always felt like you and I had similar shoes from the standpoint that there was a legacy business to get involved in. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Dad started off with predominantly windows and doors. And you took Hullco to a whole new level. And in my eyes, I saw somebody that lived the American dream where you took something that was good and made it great and then sold out at the top. And so I'm going to just turn around and leave it there for you and talk about your journey a little bit and working with Dad.
Well, that would be a show in itself, but I'll try to sum it up. Yeah, my dad started our family business in 1976. I grew up in the business as a kid, sweeping the warehouse floor. I started working in our plant that made replacement windows. We manufactured for several years. So I worked there in the teenage years. Then I started installing. Then I was a salesman. Then I was a manager. And then in 2005, I became president. In 2007, my dad had been involved in local politics. He had been a county commissioner for a long time. And then at that time was just elected to be the county trustee. And so he approached me about buying the business from him. We did not have a formal evaluation. He knew what he wanted, and I knew what I was willing to give. It's not a secret. I gave him $2 million and made payments to him for a long time. And I just took it from there, and I went to a business school. It's in Dayton, Ohio. It's called Aileron. And Clay Mathiel, who started Iams Dog Food, when he sold Iams Dog Food to Procter & Gamble for $2.3 billion, I think. He took some of that money and created this campus as a nonprofit for small business owners. And I encourage everybody to go there. I've been 4 times. But they teach courses about, they have a course for presidents, a course for managers, how to properly set up a board. They have a library of business books there. They have a lot of speakers that come in. And that's when it really hit me how important mission and vision and values were. And so we reinvented the company at that time and really let the employees know what that mission was and what our vision was internally. And then we recreated new values for many years. And when my father was there, we had on the wall our core values that are typical of faith and family, dependability, integrity, honesty. And I realized one day that's permission to play. Like, you shouldn't even work here if you don't have those things. So
right.
we created some new core. We left those on the wall. Those are important. We call them aspirational values, but our new core values that we instilled and worked toward for the next several years were more actionable. The same you could do here at your business: create a wow customer experience. When in doubt, act. We would empower the employees, and then some that a lot of people don't talk about that we feel like was important. One was generate cash and make a profit. That, we shouldn't hide from that. So we did that and then grew and then added, a couple of other markets and started growing in Knoxville. And then private equity came along 3.5 years ago, and it was the right time. And that could also be a whole podcast.
Right. I have heard. Let's back up for a second. You touched on education, and so we'll hit the rewind. I think everybody associates, and appropriately so, Matt Hullander with Hullco. There was a brief stint at Tennessee, right? When and more formal education, and then tell me when you met Jenny.
Yeah, I met my wife. We'll be married. You've put me on the spot. April 22nd will be 24 years. She actually worked in the business with me, was very helpful. And my mother worked with my father way back in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s as well. But as far as education, I really feel like not just college is important for some people, but I learned probably more from peer groups that I was in. I got invited to be in a peer group that the National Association of Home Builders facilitated. And that was invaluable for me. I was in that group for 15 years while I was at Hullco.
Design build, right? You were the first person to introduce me to design build.
Yeah, there was a lot of design build peers in the group. I actually had two peer groups at one time. One of the manufacturers we bought from, it could be like Quintera for you. Did I say that right?
Qterra, close.
Qterra.
Yeah.
Like if they get a group of their customers together, our manufacturers that we purchase from would do the same thing. So I'm in a room with folks from non-competing markets sharing the best ideals, and that was invaluable. And I would not have achieved what I did or sold when and for what I did had I not been in that peer group all those years and learned what I did from others. And, we would sit around a table for 2 days, and, if you were the best at production and I was the best at marketing and, we weren't so good at the opposite, we would just help each other. And it was that way for everybody. And so I feel like, yeah, you can get your formal education, but for me, honestly, what I learned in college, I don't remember, but I do remember everything I learned in those peer groups.
The success for Hairbenders and Revive both, it stems from education. And the education comes from sitting down at the table with the people that are best in their area and sharing the ideas. So you've taken those life lessons, and it was the impetus of the book. I mean, I think where you were going with the new actionable principles for what made Hullco successful was what started for the energy for the book.
Yeah, I read a book a couple of years ago when it came out called Who, Not How. And it's what we were just talking about with the peer groups. And it's a pet peeve of mine that if someone knows how to do something, I just ask them for help instead of me trying to figure out what they already know. So I try to do that in every area of my life right now. I'm working on a hotel in Huntsville, Alabama. I've got different development projects going on. I'm working with these dentists now, and I don't know the first thing about being a dentist, but I do understand marketing and finance and offering financing to patients and bringing in a mission and vision statement and core values to the dental practices. So as long as you know what hat to wear and where you're best, stay in your lane. But I think it helps everybody to know what they're good at. And if you're not, you can try to learn it, or you can just ask who already knows.
I think I know you guys were working on real estate, with Bobby during and then after the sale of Hullco. Do you have one project that you're most proud of, or one that, made an impact on the community?
I would say Macklemore up in North Georgia, the new golf course resort development. I was really active in that in the beginning. I'm still active and a general partner up there, and we're very proud of it. It was one of those, it's taken a long, long time. That dream started in 2006, and the hotel opened this past May. So we've just opened our second golf course as well, and a lot more to come. So that's something that took a lot of hard work that we're really proud of, and there was a lot of challenges along the way, but we've gotten where we are because of hard work and teamwork and knowing what lane to stay in and who does what. So
I get all of the updates, or I see the ads, because obviously follow you, and when Macklemore popped up, I follow Macklemore, so I see it on social. Where did you start with that project? Where was Macklemore when Matt Hullander came on board?
I was an investor. We had a fund called Scenic Land One Fund, and there were various projects in and around Chattanooga, but that was really the one that we focused on. And then 07, 08, 09 happened, and we went for a while where we had been working up there. I think this is fine to talk about because it's public record. But we had another developer, after we had done a tremendous amount of work and spent a lot of money on planning, that tried to come in and take the ideal from us and take it to another developer out of Atlanta. So we ended up in a lawsuit, and it lasted for a very long time. And we won what I understand is the first or second largest settlement in Hamilton County history. So after that lawsuit, Dwayne Horton, the president of Scenic Land Company, and my partner approached me, and he said, okay, we've got all the investors their money back, and now we have all this land up there, and we've got this old golf course. We could donate it to charity. We could do a conservation easement. Or are we crazy enough to do this again? And I said, well, we've already did half the work. Let's go. So that was when I was invited in to be a partner, and I helped in that next fundraising series. And so that was now almost 7 years ago, and it's been a fun ride, and we've really achieved a lot in that amount of time.
So I know there's some lofty expectations about where you want the golf course to be nationwide in terms of the way people view like the quality of the golf. What's the litmus test there? And, are you guys where you want to be?
Well, the new course is called the Keep, and it's already been compared to the Pebble Beach of the South, and that is a really lofty goal, but it has received a lot of press. We opened it maybe a little premature. It needs to grow in. We just opened it in the fall of 24. So as it grows in this spring, right now the greens are 10 out of 10. The rest of the grass, we're using a new grass called Stadium Zoysia that's never been used on a golf course before. People love it. 5 of the holes are on the brow. It's more of a link style type course where no matter what hole you're on, I can see you from any hole I'm on.
That's amazing.
Tinker Ma, the architects downtown, my friend Craig Peavy, he's designing the buildings, so we still got to build the structures there, but the course is open. So to answer your question, we want to be comped or compared to all the big ones that are already there, and that's who we're comped to now. Your Sea Island, Greenbrier, Palmetto Bluff, and where we're located. If you look at, you're driving from Nashville, you can get to a mountain golf course resort development where we have a spa and meeting space and cabins to rent and 4 different restaurant options without having to drive on up into North Carolina. So it's kind of like X marks the spot where we're located. We're within 2 hours of Birmingham, 2 hours of Atlanta, 2 hours to Nashville, and 45 minutes from Chattanooga. So we're attracting a lot of weddings, events, corporate activities. We've got 20,000 square feet of corporate space there at the hotel for meetings. So I think we just will continue to add on to what we've already built.
What's it take to get a PGA event? What kind of, I don't know if it's the quality of the golf course, is it who you know, but what are you guys going to have to do to host a PGA event?
Oh, that's already been discussed, actually. We have 2 golf course architects, Reese Jones, who has designed more U.S. Open courses than any golf course architect, and Bill Bergen. Bill's from Atlanta. They worked on this project together, and as soon as Reese Jones stepped on the property, he said this can host a PGA event. So it's not just the quality of the course. You're going to need a lot of infrastructure, logistics, parking. That'll be a decision we'll make in the future. But at the new course, we did purposely, we have a lot of land there, and we did not put homes. We did not develop it. There's nothing around it. So in the future, there would be space to house a lot. I mean, if the U.S. Open comes in, they're going to put up scoreboards and they're going to want to cut trees, and so you have to make that decision. Like Jack Lupton at the Honors he was offered that opportunity many times, and he decided, I don't want people messing my course up, and can Chattanooga handle the air traffic? And, so there's a lot that goes into it, but it is definitely on McLemore's radar for the Keep.
How much fun. Now, are you getting to play much?
Yeah, some.
Are you getting up there to play, though?
Yeah, I go up quite a bit. I really host more people. I have a lot of friends call that know I'm involved in it, and of course they're like, can you get me a tee time? So we're what I would call semi-private. We're public in the sense that if you're an overnight guest, you can make a tee time. So if you rent one of the cabins through our website, or if you are an overnight guest at the hotel, you can get a tee time. And maybe Wink, if you're a friend of mine, I can get you on.
Okay, that's good to know, because I've got you on my friends list. I feel fortunate that every couple of weeks somebody calls to purchase a business of mine that Harriet and I have been able to grow from the ground up. It causes you to go into that mode, though, like you just spoke of. I have to understand what that looks like. You have to get into knowing what you don't know, because they obviously see a value, and they're trying to get it for the best possible price. And if I'm serious about selling or even entertaining the offer, I really have to know what the value is. And private equity is that's the deep water. You know what I mean, someone can eat your lunch real quick if you are in that space where you don't know what you don't know. And you've dived in recently with another good buddy of mine, Charlie, who's got strong business acumen, and he's very heavily invested in real estate. And he's always got his eyes on something bigger. And you guys obviously would make good partners. And looking at the sort of private equity model, what are you guys working on now?
Well, I think you asked two questions there. I'm going to answer the second part of it, and then I want to go back to private equity and the process and all those phone calls you get, because I used to get them too, and now I'm the one giving them. Charlie Anchor, Charlene Tahani, and Prague Sony are my partners in Legacy Dental Group. They had formed the company back in 2019 and approached me and asked me to join them, and I asked them why, and they said, well, you understand marketing, you've been a good business person and a leader, and we could use some of your strengths because, they're doctors or had their role that they were playing. And they said, and you're older than we are, and you can go find older dentists that might want to sell their practice to us. But I think it's okay to tell this story. We met for the first time. We actually went to Macklemore, spent the night in a cabin, and we had a meeting the next day to talk about legacy. And I asked them individually, what is your vision for where legacy will go? And I got three completely different answers. And that's when I realized how important, not just in any business, establishing the vision, but everybody being on the same page and the employees knowing what that is. And I think vision, to me, that's internal. Like at Hullco, our vision statement was to sell and produce $25 million a year and remain the largest home improvement company in East Tennessee. That was for me and my management team and our employees to know the vision of the company and where we were going. Back previously, I mentioned IM's dog food. Clay Mathiel's was really simple, and his was to become the largest pet food provider in the world, and he did it. So, but either way, you have to define your vision. And so once we decided what our vision was at Legacy, we now know where we're headed and what the finish line looks like. And we've had private equity approach us to acquire our dental practices, but we hadn't reached our vision yet, so we didn't waste their time or ours because we're still growing. So back to your first part, private equity, and when you get those phone calls, and I get asked that a lot since I did sell, and there are so many scenarios in which you could sell. You could do an ESOP and sell to your employees. You could sell to a family member. You could sell to a competitor, or private equity would come in. I will say, in my experience, there are some great private equity companies you could partner with depending on the industry. There are probably way more that are not good partners. So it really depends on the private equity model and what they're going to do to help support you. And then you got to be really careful in the way the deal is structured. Sometimes you would stay on and your name wouldn't change. You would still be running the show. The employees wouldn't know much had happened. The public wouldn't know anything had happened. And you do that for 5 years, and then you can take a second bite of the apple and stay on with them and help them grow. One option is to be a platform company. And for example, one of the private equity groups I'm involved in, they started with veterinarian clinics. Now they've got 200 of them, but they started with one. That was the platform. And so there's so many ways to skin that cat, but then you also have to look at how they value the company and are the goals they set for you in the future achievable or not. Most of them are going to do a multiple of your EBITDA, depending on the industry.
Are you getting that up front, or are you getting a portion of that?
It can be done one of two ways. When I sold my business, I just sold it, and I got paid, and I worked there for 6 months to help in the transition, and then I was gone. Looking back, and had I not had a cancer scare, I would have considered doing that differently where I did stay on. So a lot of times, let's say, and I'm making this up, and this is not for Hullco, but any company, let's say you put a value on the business and private equity gives you, let's say, 60% of that money. Let's say it's $10 million. You got $6 million, and now you're going to reinvest the $4 million into what they're doing, and you believe in what they're doing. Or maybe you're the platform company and you're going to go help them acquire more, whether it's hair salons or your other revives around the country, and you grow with them, and that 40% that you left in there, that $4 million may turn into way more than you got the first time. So it really depends on how it's structured. Some of the best numbers I've seen in private equity when they do what they call their recap, which is normally 5, 6, 7 years later when another bigger private equity firm comes in to buy all those revives now, is 6 to 7 times. No, 6 to 7 times your $4 million you left in. So
okay.
It doesn't always work that way. And sometimes it goes way longer than you want it to. I've seen all examples, but in a perfect world, that would be a good situation. You took money off in the end, you stuck around and helped them grow the business, and then you made more money the second time when somebody else acquired them.
I've done private equity. I've done private placement. I was an investment banker for a while, and I've seen a lot of shade. And my question, Matt, is, and this is for selfish reasons, how do you vet those people? How do you vet the private equity? And, at least with private equity, you're having to register and play by some rules. There's got to be some transparency. Whoever's being bought, they have to know that there's some sort of regulatory body that's out there that's looking out for their best interests. And so I've got so many more questions on this topic, but how do you vet the people and make sure that you're in business with the right person?
I would ask other business owners that sold to them how their process went. A lot of times they will have signed an NDA or confidentiality where they can't talk about it, but they shouldn't be able to not tell me it was a good or bad experience. And then sometimes with the permission of the private equity group, you can dig in and talk to them. For example, I was in a situation and I met some owners and I said, "Did you get all your escrow money, and have you been sued for anything?" And they all said no, or they got their escrow money, yes. They had not been sued, which meant a lot to me. Some of these private equity groups have attorneys just there to try and get some of their money back, to be honest.
Clawback.
And they know going into it they're going to get half of your clawback back, and I don't appreciate that. So you want to go into one, for example, and if they have a lot of in-house attorneys, nothing against attorneys out there, although sometimes y'all are the only winners in some of these situations. But I guess to vet them, I would want to talk to other business owners that they've already acquired and see how the experience went, and have they had any legal actions through that course. And then how was the clawback, or what some people call escrow, how was it treated? Sometimes they take 10 or 15%. Sometimes they stretch that out over 2, 3, or 4 years. Mine was over 2 years and a smaller percentage. So those things are negotiable on the front end. But you really need good representation. Call me and I can give you some advice. I know a couple of investment bankers. You can have your own. Some people try to do it on their own, and I did. And I had my attorney to help, but I also didn't know what I didn't know because I hadn't been through that before. And looking back, I would have done things differently now that it's been 3.5 years and I've learned, what I've learned through meeting a lot of the private equity companies. So I guess do your homework and find help. And sometimes you might think, well, I don't need to pay that investment banker 3, 4, or 5% to help me in this situation, but a lot of times they will save you a lot more or make you a lot more.
Let's go back and revisit that last statement. I wish I had been in more contact with you when you were going through the sale process, because I think about it regularly for all kinds of reasons. What would you have done different, and were you sued?
A lot of it I can't talk about. No, I was not sued.
Good.
We did have some issues there at the end about, my holdback or my escrow, but they did what they said they would do. I think another option I would have had, some companies, for example, the West Shore was backed by private equity, and they were going around the country and buying a lot of people, and they did open a lot of their own offices. My understanding's I think I was their 7th acquisition, and Last year they did well over $1 billion. They're in 45 locations now, and that's their plan. And eventually they'll either go public or recap or something will happen, an event. That was their goal to start with. But another option for me would have been to leave the name Hullco, find private equity that would have let me stay there 5 years, keep that same culture and keep my same vision and keep all my employees, and then help grow with the new private equity group. Just before I was introduced to West Shore, who acquired Hullco, I had a bone marrow biopsy and a cancer scare, and I went about a week not knowing if I had leukemia or not. And for that reason, I made the decision I made. Had it not been for that, I would have taken more time, did my homework, and fortunately, I'm okay. I have what's called Felty syndrome, they say, which is something I can live with. But the real diagnosis I got was I wasn't living life on purpose, and this gave me an opportunity to do that.
That's so interesting. I never, even with all the friends that we had in common, when the book was the first time I knew about the cancer scare.
Well, I don't tell everybody.
Well, I'm glad I'm glad we're finding a way to work with it. What kind of protocols do you have right now for health?
Nothing. I went to our mutual friend and my doctor across the street here, Carlton Volberg, and
Yes,
I did my routine blood work, and he called me on my cell phone one day out of the blue and said, I need you to come in and talk about your blood work. And so when I got there, he didn't waste any time, and he said, I want you to go to Tennessee Oncology. And it took me a minute. I thought I was here to talk about my blood work, and it hit me. So it didn't take long for me to get on the phone and make that appointment. I went there. They did every test for every virus and genetic anomaly they could think of, and they couldn't find anything. My white blood count was really low, and my neutrophils were low. So they did an ultrasound of all my organs, and my spleen was enlarged. I've also suffered from arthritis my whole life, and when you mix those three things together, a lot of times that points toward leukemia. So they offered to do my bone marrow biopsy there in the office, and I was looking over the doctor's shoulder, and his nurse was shaking her head no. And I'm a bit of a sissy, so I'm like, no, you can put me to sleep. So I went in for the procedure, a nice doctor. It was a lady doctor, and when I came to, my wife was there, and she said, we'll have these results in 5 days. And that was a really tough 5 days to try and keep it quiet and live with it. And I'll never forget where I was when she called and said, your bone marrow biopsy's clean and looks as good as any I've seen. So Felty syndrome, and I've been to Mayo Clinic and several places to identify, is that really what I have? And what I've concluded is I just happen to have low white blood count, and I happen to have an enlarged spleen, and I happen to have arthritis. So that's been 5 years ago now, so I think I'm in the clear.
What's the conversation like with Jenny and Reese right after you get done with Carlton?
Well, I kept it from Reese, my daughter. I was taking her to school every morning, and when I went the morning of my bone marrow biopsy, I made up an excuse why I couldn't take her, and Jenny took her to school, and my friend Bobby took me to the hospital. So I didn't tell her, and she didn't know for a long time. Jenny knew I was scared and was right there with me, of course, like she's always been. And a week later, we were just super, super relieved. But it did change my perspective. I was taking things for granted. My priorities were in the wrong order, and it's given me an opportunity to change that now.
Tell me what's different. From an attitude standpoint, tell me what you've changed.
Well, I was always prideful about being busy and having 20 activities going on and different projects. And, you know, I would ask my friends, how are you doing? And they would say, I'm busy. And I would say, I'm busy too. And we would wear it like a badge of honor. And
there's nothing wrong with that.
It's also nothing to be super proud of because, you know, if you ask me right now, what are your top 5 priorities? I would say God, my wife, my daughter, my friends, and my work. And to most people, that's what I would tell them. But internally, I was just a skilled liar because it was the exact opposite. It was work first, and my daughter and wife and God were getting the short end of the stick. So it gave me the opportunity to try my best, and it's not always in perfect order, but to at least keep that top of mind and get my order straight.
That's good to hear. So good to hear. One of the last times I got to see you was at the Ooltewah Golf Club, and was proud, first of all, to support the campaign, and got to chime in on my 2 cents to the group as to why I thought you were the right person for the job to run for mayor of, Chattanooga. I want to hear from you what the experience was like to run for public office at that executive level, and if it changed you in any way, the way that obviously the cancer has changed your perspective about life. I believe you're running for mayor after that, correct?
Yeah, I jumped in with all feet and hands right after I sold the business, which was a mistake. I didn't have
selling the business or running for mayor.
After I sold the business, I just went all in on several things, new business ventures, the run for mayor, which I will address, and a lot of folks that sell their business, and if anybody's listening and going through this process, I didn't have that person come to me and tell me, chill out, take 6 months off, take a year, don't do anything, figure out what you want. A good friend of mine's going through this process now, and a friend gave him a book called Halftime, and I should have reflected more and slowed down, and I didn't. And so I rushed into a lot of decisions, and I don't know if it was so I would still feel important or why, but I did make that decision to run for mayor, and I appreciate your kind words. What was the process like, and did it change me? Yes, it changed me. And it's not a process that I would recommend to many people. I had never done that before. I'm not a great public speaker. I'm not overly educated, but I've got common sense, and I've ran a business, and I felt like I could run the county the same way, and I feel like I would have done a good job. Politics is ugly. Politics can be nasty. There were negative mailers that went out about me, and actually one of the staff that was helping me came to me with some pretty nasty TV commercials about my opponents. And it was a really tight race. There were 3 of us in it, and it was a few hundred votes that made the difference. And, 2 weeks before the election, he said, if you'll let me run these 2 commercials, you're a shoo-in. But they were really mean and hateful, and I didn't want my daughter to see that side of politics, and I didn't let him run them, and actually ended up firing him, and I lost. But looking back, I held a lot of resentment, or what my counselor says is anger that I hid really well. So I made a decision that I was going to fix that, and so I text Weston Wamp, and last week went and sit down in his office with him for 45 minutes and cleared the air and told him I thought he was doing a good job, and I'd rather, us be assets to one another than enemies. So, and you look at Bill Lee and Randy Boyd and even way back when, Weston's dad, Zach Wamp, and Marilyn Lloyd, you can later on become friends, but in the heat of it, it's not fun, and I wasn't cut out for it. And I get asked often if I'll do it again, and I don't have to think about it very long at all. The answer is no. So I think I'm where I'm supposed to be, and the mayor is where he's supposed to be.
We've had a lot of the same leadership in Chattanooga for the last couple of terms at mayor of the city. How do you feel like the growth of Chattanooga has gone in relationship to the way that the mayoral office has run and their political philosophies?
Well, everyone has different political views and philosophies, and you're right or left or in the middle or whatnot, but I think Chattanooga is doing a good job. We're really growing. And keep in mind, there's a county mayor and a city mayor. but I think they're working well together, and we've got a lot of things coming. And we've also got a lot of challenges. Another meeting I had with Weston was about our sewer system in this town, and I know a lot of developers. It's really old. It's a combination of what's happened over decades. It's not one person's fault, but you got to come up with a way to fix it. And so those things are being addressed. And you got the infrastructure, not just with sewers and roads and development, and everybody has an opinion, but I think both mayors are doing a good job to address those things. And then working together, just take like the Bend, for example. What's going to happen down there at the old Austin plant is unbelievable. I had dinner with Jimmy White a few nights ago, and I mean, the plans for what they're doing there, it'll almost double the size of downtown Chattanooga, and it's going to change. What he has planned there will change Chattanooga just like the aquarium did. And then across the interstate, you have Gary Chazen's property, which will be the new baseball stadium and all the development there and the multifamily. Something the county and city I don't think can fix, though. That's a big problem. That's more of a state level issue, the interstate system we have in Missionary Ridge and this mess over here, at 24 and 75. But outside of that, I think they're doing a good job, and I'm happy to support them any way I can.
It's good to know. Good to know. Do you get to communicate with Bob Corker at all and the conquest that he's on right now?
I like Bob. I respect him and look up to him, and we have a lot of the same aspirations and both mess around with real estate a fair amount. I was supposed to be on a plane with him to Nashville and missed him this past week and haven't talked to him in a little while. But, yeah, I do like Bob a lot and would love to catch up with him. And I know he's got his hands in a lot of stuff now, most of it really real estate related.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my buddy Evan, okay, so Evan worked for Bud, right, from the salvage company. And Evan's dad owns 60 acres down on 331 before you get to the bay. And they get buyout offers all the time. It's prime real estate for a home, Lowe's, Home Depot. And it was Bob Corker's group that was buying the property across the street from them that was going to be on the bay. And he was going to do a development with Marina, this massive, entertainment and restaurants and condos. And it was just neat to kind of bump into him via Evan to see what he's doing down in Florida, but he hasn't slowed down for a minute. Let's talk about giving back. In the book, we mentioned philanthropy, and if you, we put together very sophisticated like AI filters to help generate profiles to ask good meaningful questions when we're combining lots and lots of information. We had the book, we had matthullander.com, articles that were on the internet, and all of them mentioned the sort of incessant need to give back, right? Like, I've been blessed. One of the mantras in the book is to whom much is given, much is expected. And now, straight from the heart, you're giving back. What are you working on now, and how has it changed your life?
I've just always had not only Luke 21, the verse you just mentioned, in the back of my head, but another way of saying that is real simple: what goes around comes around. And I've never, I guess, been willing to take the risk to quit giving and see what would happen. Because when I have given back, I've been super blessed, and so I'm just going to keep doing that. And I think giving back can be in many ways. It can be me helping the local small business owner that just started a pressure washing business that wants to eat lunch with me. It can be, the boards that I sit on, or actually writing a check, or the money our foundation, gives away. We're real active right now with Young Life, and then the Jason Foundation, which raises awareness and prevention of teenage suicide. But it's just that simple. I feel like it's we're instructed to do that, and I don't do it for any recognition or to be boastful about it. And a lot of times nobody knows, and I don't want them to know. But I guess where it really hit me the most, and I've supported the Jason Foundation for about a decade now, and Clark Flatt started the Jason Foundation. He's from Nashville, and his son Jason took his life when he was 16, and nobody saw it coming. But he told two of his friends that morning, this is what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it, where I'm going to do it. And they were scared they would get in trouble. They didn't know how to react. And so the Jason family now goes around to not just parents, and there's a lot of online resources, but mostly schools, and teach teachers the warning signs of what might be coming. And so when my daughter was going to school at Baylor, I asked the chaplain there, Rev Gallimore, if I could invite Clark to speak to the student body. So he came and spoke to the entire student body and told the story of his son and what Jason Foundation stood for, and that if you were ever in that situation, you need to find somebody to talk to. And late that night, Rev Gallimore called me and said a 15-year-old girl came in his office, and I think we saved her life that day. So I know firsthand that it helps. I will say, though, while we're on giving, I do have some of your really, really big organizations, your Red Crosses, and they have tremendous overhead. And there's a website, you can go look at it. They may have 90+% overhead, and they're giving 10% away.
It's nothing.
And, you know, I had a friend, we were sitting upstairs outside at Las Margaritas years ago, 25, 30 years ago, and she worked for one of the big ones. I won't say their name. And I said, Rona, if I give you $1, how much of that really, really helps somebody? And she said a dime. And so I've really been, I guess, picky about knowing where the money goes. And so Jason Foundation, and you can look it up too, their overhead is 6%. So 94 cents out of that dollar I know is going to help somebody. And they do that because they go into towns and partner with local hospitals, and like here, the behavioral health centers, and that's where they set up shop. So they're not building all their own structures. And so they're very conscious about that. So we help them. The Young Life's been amazing for my daughter. She's a Young Life leader right now. Jenny and I recently went to the Young Life camp. It's called Sharp Top over in Jasper, Georgia, and I was blown away at just hundreds of kids worshiping God that were teenagers. And a lot of times you don't see that. And I hope there's a revelation going on right now with all these teenagers. And at least with my daughter and her friends said, I'm seeing that, and I'm very proud of that. But I could list another dozen organizations that mean a lot to us, but I do think a lot of them are very important, and they got to get support from somewhere.
Now, you've taken a different approach with the book. It's not just proceeds, it's all the money that comes in. I'm losing my ass on this book, but I hope it helps people. And I've given more copies away than people are buying on Amazon. I'd say I've sold 2,500 books, but I've probably given more than that away. But any that somebody buys, we're just giving every bit of it to the Jason Foundation. I'm happy to do it. Well, you've been blessed, and you're giving back. Now, speaking of the Jason Foundation, this is tied to Nashville through the Nashville Grind, which happens to be another new project up in the state's capital. What are you doing with the Nashville Grind?
Yeah, I'm super excited about Nashville Grind. I had about 2 years ago this ideal to actually, a friend of mine helped me with this idea to use influencers to sell coffee direct to consumer via e-commerce. And he had a lot of ties to country music singers and influencers in and around Nashville. And then my friend Kessler Cuffman here in Chattanooga, he has a nonprofit called Dynamo. Tim Kelly gave him an old building the city had down in St. Elmo, and they converted it into a studio where if these kids in our local high schools maintain a certain grade point average, where maybe when you and I or our parents were in high school, you would go to home ec or whatever, they now go to Kessler's studio and they learn videography and how to make music and photography and the business of entertainment. And so through Nashville Grind, our goal is to raise awareness for that program and use the influencers to promote the brand. We do have incredible coffee. And then we'll have individual artists that will have their own blend of coffee. They get to make their own blend. And then we got merchandise and stuff as well. So our soft launch is March 1st, and then we'll launch later with a big event at Gibson Guitar. So we're partnering with Gibson Guitar. We're partnering with BMI to be the official coffee of all the BMI artists. And then basically we have insiders, we have headliners, and then we have fans or influencers. And so we'll use the insiders, which may be like a songwriter. One of my partners is Dallas Davidson. He's written 30 plus number one hits, and a lot of them were Luke Bryan songs, so he's good friends with Luke. Dallas would be an insider, and he can help us promote the brand. He's out at Troubadour in Nashville wearing Nashville Grind shirt right now. He just sent me a picture of it earlier. So we'll use the insiders, and then we're going to give out promo links for all of the insiders to use. So if you're a BMI, there's I think 7,000 BMI artists, and BMI collects the royalties for the artist, either when their song gets played or whatever happens. So if you were an artist at BMI, it might be NashvilleGrind.com/Jamie123, and that way I know that's where that sale came from, and you can make royalties off that. So we're helping the up-and-comers, because so many, like I just read a quote where Lainey Wilson said, she had a pull-behind camper and lived in her camper for 12 years before she hit it. And there's a lot of stories about the guys dragging their speakers in those bars and honky-tonks and living in their vehicles. And so we want to help, not just help them by giving them another way to generate income, but they're also going to help promote our brand, which is in turn going to give back to Dynamo. So we've got this big plan. I've been working on it for pretty solid for about a year and a half, and it'll just be NashvilleGrind.com. But our launch is March 1st, and we're excited about it.
So let's talk about direct-to-consumer. We're skipping, selling to distributors. Does this mean you guys handle fulfillment through one location? I mean, you're going to have from the manufacturing and handling directly from the manufacturer straight to the consumer?
Yes. So Shopify is the platform that we're building our website on, and then our fulfillment center, which is actually in Nashville off Nolensville Drive, they have access to the data. So you go in and order 3 bags of coffee, a tumbler and a coffee cup and a T-shirt. It's all going to get fulfilled from that center within 48 hours, 72 if you're on the West Coast. And that's what's taken a lot of the time. Everybody's like, hey, you've been talking about that for a while, just launch it. But like K-Cups, for example, I had to take 200 pounds of coffee, ship it to Pennsylvania. They had to have the K-Cups made with our, logo on top. Then they have to grind and pack the K-Cups and ship them back to Nashville, put them in a box of 12 where I can then sell them to you. So there's been a lot of logistics in forming the company. We're also going to try and work with the Nashville Chamber of Commerce and get our K-Cups in all the downtown hotels. So there's also a side play here where we can help promote the town of Nashville as well.
I want to go back to the book for a second. You've got a goal of 1 million readers. Is that just a personal benchmark, or is there some significance tied to the 1 million readers?
No, it was just my lofty goal. Like when Clay Mathiel said, I want to be the largest dog food provider in the world. I don't know if I'll reach that, but I'm going to try every day. I'm really encouraged because daily I get a phone call. Last night, the gentleman that's helping us with all our merchandise for Nashville Grind, we had a meeting last night before dinner, and he was showing me samples of all our merchandise. And twice he referenced my book in our conversation, and I didn't know he had read it. I recently got a letter in the mail from a gentleman that said, my wife is dying from cancer, and you don't know how much your book means to me and my family right now. So if it helps someone, and it's a very simple read, it's, or you can listen to my redneck voice, read it on Apple or Audible or Allsound or audiobook. But I think that if it can make a difference for someone, that's why I want to get it out there. I've already thought of a few things I would change, and there may be a Daily Climb 2.0 here in a year or two. But as long as it keeps helping people, I just want to get it out there. I don't have I might have a brand, I guess, or a personal brand here in Chattanooga. I don't have one nationwide, but I think through Nashville Grind, I can also help facilitate more book sales and just change people's lives if I can.
You mentioned Gibson Guitars, and Mike ran a campaign for Gibson Guitars. Mike's forensic SEO. and he did the entire digital blueprint for Michael's Craft Store. I mean, the email marketing, the social, the website, the silo architecture. They had Glock, and the insights that we get from him are incredible. But we're aiming to hit a tick on the wall,
focused.
But let's talk about your general approach to marketing and why it still resonates today.
Well, I think marketing's changed a lot, and it's even in just a few years, it's completely different now than it was a decade ago. And that's why with Nashville Grind, we're using influencers, which you and I 10 years ago wouldn't have thought about influencers. We would call it a referral, or, Sonia had her hair done at Hairbenders, and she told Tammy. Well, I think, and back in the day, first of all, knowing the score of the game, I think, is most important, whatever CRM or tool you're using to manage where your leads are coming from, you have to know the score of the game, and that way you know how to spend your marketing dollars. And at Hullco, we drilled down, and Terry, I had a great marketing manager for many years, knowing all the data, not just what is our average sale. I mean, we even got so specific that we knew which salespeople we should send on certain sales calls depending on the demographic of the customer. And so knowing your numbers is crucial. I think a lot of companies, it's a shotgun approach, and they're just trying everything, or a sales rep came in from a radio or TV station and said, try this or this magazine, and you really need a plan. So we would start with the end in mind and say, okay, what's our revenue goal for this year? Let's say it's $20 million. And then we knew what we wanted our percentage of marketing to be. So for easy math, let's say it was 10%. And so we knew we had $2 million to spend on marketing. Then we would drill it down to each month, and we would look at history of previous years to know when people were buying home improvement products and what months to spend the money and when not to, and when, going back to school was an issue, when the home show was going to be in these different towns we were working in. So then we would decide our budget for that month, and then we would go to, what medium we're going to use to get it. Back then we used a lot of local TV and a lot of local news, and at the time it worked really well. And I think I would still use traditional media, but now, you got, like I cut the cord, I'm YouTube TV, and a lot of people are watching TV on apps now, so it's completely changing everything. For example, up at Macklemore, one of the most effective ways we've found is these groups that come to us and say, we have influence, we have followers, we're in the golf community, and we'll give them a free round of golf to play the keep, but they're out there flying drones and posting all that content for us, and that's been probably more impactful than us going and spending money, trying to choose, different mediums that we can direct those customers. And you got to know who your target is too, like you mentioned previously. I'm big on focus. Now, depending on who your demographic for who has their hair done here at Hairbenders is most likely very different than the Supercuts down the street. There are some businesses where you can try to appeal to everybody, but most businesses, they know who their customer is and who that demographic is, or in my old business, who the decision maker is, which most of the time was the wife or female in the house. So I just encourage everybody, if you've got a half-assed marketing plan, you can do better. I'm sure everybody could do better, but I would hone in on knowing who my customer is and then really, really break it down. But you can't do that if you don't know the score of the game. So you got to have the right software or reporting to know if you're winning or not.
I love that. Harry and I recently were fortunate enough to get into out-of-state rentals, short-term rentals, and I've loved it. I've loved the experience. We like having a place we can go down at the beach and a place we can go with the family, and also know that it's serving a purpose. There's strong write-offs, and when it's finally paid off, it's going to be a huge asset. One of the other targets that I have for the next edition isn't going to be, another house by the beach or actually in Florida at all. I would love to have a place up in Blue Ridge. There's no slow season in Blue Ridge. And, whether it's you going up for the holidays or if it's summer months when kids are off, like traditional off time, it's booming up there. And you recently have taken your talents to Blue Ridge. I'm personally interested, but I'm sure other people want to know why you chose Blue Ridge and specifically what your projects are, how they're going to be different. Because I know it's not going to be status quo.
Well, I didn't want the secret out, but Blue Ridge is great. Paul Shaheen from Channel 3 is my partner in a company called Elevate Escapes, and we started building short-term rental cabins there. And I guess where we try to be different, like we're working on a cabin now that we're wrapping up in the next couple of weeks, and we've went over the top, putting green, infrared sauna, Peloton. You need to have those amenities that'll help the performa of the house. But it's also very tempting. For example, this one we're wrapping up, we could also sell it and make a lot of money and just start flipping them. So I know a lot of people's approach is, I want to build one. One day I got a portfolio of all these short-term rental properties, and that's great. There's also the attitude of, well, let me rent them until I can sell it and, make 20 or 30% on this house and then use that money to do something else. So it depends on what your personal goals are. As far as Blue Ridge, I think it's just evolved over the last several years. As far as proximity, I mean, you can be there in an hour and a half from Chattanooga, so you're not having to drive all the way to Highlands or Cashers to get in the mountains and find a cool place with a town that has. I was there last week and tried to go to Gray's Steakhouse, and 9 p.m. was the only reservation I could get in January, which is supposed to be their slowest time of the year. Yeah. I couldn't even get in Black Sheep, which is another one of their great restaurants there, and the town was packed. And so I think it's a good getaway that's actually fairly close to not just Chattanooga, but Atlanta also. There's a lot of pull from Atlanta. There's a new golf course development there, Old Toccoa, that's really cool. And then there's entertainment, there's apple orchards, there's vineyards you can go visit. You can just drive around the mountains. There's a beautiful lake there. And then downtown's cool to hang out at too. So I like Blue Ridge. I think it's good for a short-term rental market. It's good for second houses. I also think it would be very good for a boutique hotel, which I may be working on. So.
Might know something about that. Is your wife frustrated with you
today?
Right now?
No, she's very understanding and knows how I'm geared. And my DNA is just the way it is. And in my book, I write a lot about focus. I believe in focus 110%. It's hard to be, a mile wide and an inch deep. And I really want to go deep because I feel that's when you can achieve the most. But just like me, I can see your golf swing and tell you what you're doing wrong. It doesn't mean I can do it myself. And so this is an area that I admit I struggle in, and it's very hard. And I sit down with her recently, and I listed every business venture I was in, and I said, we're going to pick some of these to get rid of. And it's tough. Some I'm partners with a friend of mine. Some have huge future, opportunities to generate income. But at some point, you can't do it all. And no is a very powerful word, because when you say no, you're saying yes to something else. And sometimes that might be something more important, like family. And so if I said yes to all the opportunities, I wouldn't have time for God or family or friends or health. And so when you look out for those things, sometimes the best thing you can do is say no. And I felt obligated because I used to care what people thought about me. I maybe do a little bit now, but a whole lot less. And so I would try and please everyone. And I felt like if I said no, I had to take 10 minutes and justify my reason. And I just stopped doing that. No's all you got to say. And I hate it sometimes. I'm on the Jason Foundation's board. I'm on First Horizon Bank's board, and I sometimes get invited. Last year I was invited to be on Bethel Bible Village's board, And I said, look, I want to help. I'll sponsor your golf tournament. Now's not the right time for me. I wanted to say yes, but I knew that for my family and me and my time and the travel I had coming up and my responsibilities to the other boards I was helping, that I needed to say no. So it's almost like I look forward to it now, and it creates time, because that's what life's made of. And so back to Jenny, she understands that, but she also knows how I am. So it's a balance, and hopefully, over the next decade, I find out what those 2 or 3 things are that I really, really need to focus on, one of which I know will be Nashville Grind, and some of the other opportunities. And a lot of it's private equity investments that we were in that'll come to an end anyway. A lot of those deals are 7, 8, 10 years max, and we'll roll out of those, and then, I can have more focus. But for most people out there, if you have that heating and air company or that hair salon, or I feel like you should, while you have it, just go all in on it. And when I had Hullco, I wasn't out doing all these other real estate plays. I had a mixed-use retail development over here by my office, or glorified strip mall up here.
It's a good-looking strip mall, though.
But that was it. Now I've got into a lot of other things, but when it was Hullco, it was all Hullco. And that way we were able to achieve what we did because there was focus on our vision.
One of the things in our early conversations, this goes back a long time, and you were talking to me at Hullco about the importance of taking care of your people, because without good, happy employees, you don't have any customers or clients to take care of. And so that's where the focus is. It should be on your staff and making sure they're happy. And your staff's a reflection of you. With all that being said, how do you feel about today's workforce? And so, for me, I'm hiring even 18, 19, and 20. So most predominantly not college educated, but we're constantly having to stay sort of groomed on the social, what am I trying to say? The social interests, the language, but also what it takes to motivate them. And oftentimes I find myself competing with self-interest over what would be better for my employee if they could just think about their life in 5 or 10 years. And kind of with all that being said, how do you feel about, I think, technology with young people and, the values that they're carrying as they move into the workforce?
Well, it's definitely changed. That might be a better question for one of our daughters. But I do feel like the culture that you create, and me, I hate to keep going back to Hullco, it was just constantly communicating, being in front of them. You don't want them wondering what's going on. They were part of us talking about our values. And I did a weekly video because we were in multiple locations. I couldn't see everybody, so we had Fridays with Matt, and it was a video that everyone got on Fridays where I might interview another employee that had exercised on one of our core values, or to give them updates about the company. But it's just staying in touch, staying in front of them. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the right way to do it today, because I'm almost 52, and a lot of like my daughter was helping me post something last night. So I think, though, that they have to know where you're at. They need to know that they're part of something. They need to know where the company's headed. They need to know what the company cares about. We talked about vision earlier. Mission, to me, the difference in vision and mission is, vision is internally where you want to take the company. Mission is, it can be outwardly. It can be for the public and for your employees. Like at Hullco, mine was to make it better for our coworkers, our customers, and our community. And that's something we could all get around. So it's just, in my opinion, constantly keeping that in front of them and letting them know that you care. After we rolled out our new core values several years ago, I went to an early 7 a.m. production meeting one day, and I said, raise your hand if you can tell me our core values. Well, nobody knew them, and I realized that was a problem. And it was my job and the leadership team's job to make sure they understood what those were and why they were important. And then when we kept it in front of them, it made a difference. For example, when in doubt, act. Like, we empowered them. You didn't have to call and ask permission. If you need to make a customer happy, you make the decision. And they started doing that, and it empowered them to be an associate. They weren't just an employee. They were part of the team that was helping make a difference. So I think all that's important for culture. I'm not going to say I'm smart enough to tell you how to handle all the new social aspect of it, but I do know it's important, especially in that age group. And the problem now, in my opinion, is it's very easy to jump around. And so what do we do as employers to retain that employee? It's like in our dental practices. We could have a hygienist go to another dentist tomorrow like that. It's easy in that industry. And I don't know about your industry, but they could work somewhere else.
Sure.
So we got to let them know, why is it important you stay here, and what can we do for your future, and how can you grow into the next role, or how can you make more money, and give them a reason and to be proud to work for you versus it just being another job.
I like that. All of that comes from effective goal setting, Matt. I think it's a personal strength of yours, but it's a different approach.
Yeah. I read, and I've studied on this a lot and Googled a bunch. And it's funny, we just had New Year's Eve. I'm all for people setting goals. I know you need to get really specific with your goal. If you're a goal setter, you can't say, I want to lose weight. You're just not. You can say, I want to lose 8 pounds by March the 11th and work toward that. That's different. My approach is I try to work from, the end, with the end in mind, and see what I want to be like. I want to have a vision of, what does Matt look like in a year, 5 years, 10 years? What's his pant size? What's his bank account look like? What's his relationship with his wife and his family? Is he happy or not? Like, I can look out there and see that person. And if I wake up every day looking at that guy, that's who I'm chasing, and that's my approach because then my habits will change. If I want to be that person's not going to drink a 12-pack every night. So I don't have to set a goal that says I'm not going to drink a 12-pack. My goal is I'm going to be that person in 10 years, and that person wouldn't act this way. So it's more about changing our habits, and it's a combination of vision and who wrote it? James Clear, the book Atomic Habits. And, there's the 5 a.m. club and make your bed every day. I'm not going to get into all of it, but I do think it's real simple. Having vision is just having the imagination to look into the future at where you want to be. And it can be that way for your business, for your marriage, for the way you are as a parent. But if you look at it as an individual, I just think that resonates with me more because, and you can Google it, 93% of people keep a New Year's resolution for 1 year. And so the odds are against you. I mean, for the 7% out there that's able to do it, I commend you, and I think you should keep doing it. But for the other 93% that don't keep the weight off, or they put the cigarette in their mouth, or whatever their goal was, I would take my approach and just have a vision of who you want to be, and then get in that guy's shoes every day.
If I sit down with Reese and I say, tell me about your dad, what's she going to tell me?
I think she's proud of me. I'm proud of her. I think we have a great relationship. I think we could always be better parents, and I want to be that. And when I look at that guy out there in 10 years, that's what I think about. It's the guy that's at her wedding. And I got a song I want to learn how to play on the guitar that I play at her wedding. She doesn't know that yet. But I've already mapped out what that day looks like. And then she's going to get married, and then she's going to have kids. And so I'm giving you my version. You'd have to ask her, and I'd love to know her answer. But I think she'd be proud of me, and we have a really good relationship. And I think she sees work ethic, and I see that in her too. She's real active at Young Life. She's active in her sorority. She's side hustling. She's influencing. She's helping Anita Hedrick sell clothes. She's babysitting. She's house sitting. She's dog sitting. So even though she's still a teenager for another month and a half, I can see that some of Jenny and I have rubbed off on her, and I'm proud of that. Proud of her.
Yeah, you should be. You should be. How do you want to be remembered after you're gone? We're after that picture of that guy. And so after that, the next stage, how do you want to be remembered when you're gone?
Well, you asked two questions. After that guy, I'm going to pick a new guy 10 years.
Okay, good answer.
And I'm going to chase that guy for the next 10 and do that until I'm not here any longer. And then, ironically, you asked that. The last chapter of my book is my eulogy. And a lot of people think that's morbid. I don't at all, because we're all going to die. You can't run from it. So why not go ahead and plan for it? So I revisit it each year. And in 2023, or whenever I wrote it for my book, that's what it was then. That's why I said there may be a 2.0. But I went ahead and mapped out my next 50 years. And that's what I want to work toward, which just goes back to vision. But I just want to be remembered for the guy that was a good friend, that was a good spouse, that was a good father. I just watched a TED Talk. It's an old TED Talk. And it was one of the longest studies that had ever been studied. And they took one entire class of Harvard males at 19 years old, and then they took the same number of inner city Boston young men that were 19 years old. And it's the longest study that's ever existed. This is the 75th year.
I'm familiar.
And they're still studying it. And they try to determine how did they achieve happiness? And at the end of their life, how did they define what made them happy? And relationships was far and above number one. Money, fame, vanity, all that was a distant second to relationships. So I just want to be remembered for being a good friend and a good person and somebody that helped others. And I think that's what the big man would want too.
Well, for what it's worth, that's how I'm going to remember you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here today, buddy.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck.